Hi.
How's it going? So I'm Elgar. I've met some of you guys, but hello, I'm Elgar anyway. And I'm going to introduce myself quickly. I'm an editor and stylist and hosting today's panel, which should be really interesting. It's really, really great to be able to speak to all you guys who are really just so brilliant at everything you do. So it's actually really nice for me to sort of chat to you guys as well. So.
Do you think that it's worth it to go? Do you think that, sorry if that's like a controversial question, I've just always been like in many ways envious because I never, studied jewelry and all the arts. And actually I wonder like what you guys think, do you feel like it was worth it? Because it is in itself a big investment.
University.
Yeah, for me it was because I was an extra Jehovah's Witness kid who got chucked into the world. So I was just really brand new and I needed structure. And also I needed to find my people. I was very blessed to be in a class with friends who we all work in the industry now and it's fab. And it allowed me to blossom. However, as I've gotten older, I'm just a bit like, it all depends because that's what say there's 100 students, there's 4 of us that I can say. A lot of my friends who do go to uni, it caused depression, it caused stress, it caused, especially those who did design. Like I remember sitting and watching my friends doing fashion design and they're not getting taught how to capitalize on like, oh, let's go buy this silk. And I'm like, but yeah, that's great. But how are you going to do this if someone wants to buy 20? And then I saw a lot of my friends start brands and then fall off. And that no one talks about the emotional impact that has on working class students where you've left uni and you're already a failure. Do you know what I mean? So it depends on the type of person. I think if you're new to an area and you don't have much structure, I think university is fab.
How do you actually get into this industry if you don't have a whole load of money behind you?
If you haven't got the money behind you, then especially like typically like photographers, like a lot of what Campbell has said, has been an elite career for a very long time because you were able to, I guess, put these deposit down, assist for X amount of years and be able to be sustained by your parents or your family or whatever. I think only recently it's now starting to change with Campbell and with his other people. Is very different in beauty and specifically in nails. But I would say both when I was trying to get into media and TV and then when I was kind of getting into fashion is I would just say talk to everybody. I know that sounds very simplistic and very basic, but I just think talk to people, talk to everyone. Like I remember I went to Mac and then that's when I met Tom and then we got talking and then he did my makeup and then I was like, do you ever do shoots? I know it sounds so basic and so nothingness, but you talking to that one person, they then find out that, I don't know, we're so interweaved, I don't know.
I guess that initiatives like this, sort of mentoring matters and those sort of things that weren't around then, they already opened up a door a lot easier than what before, maybe.
I think you just have to really, really want it. I just remember sitting on the top of my hill in New Addington, seeing London, going, I'm going to make it, whatever that means. Or I didn't have internet, so I'd always be at the library, like, what can I do that's free? And I'd always be at galleries. And like Emma said, I was the gift of the gab of Croydon. I would talk to anyone who I thought was doing anything.
The gift of the gab of Croydon.
Because I was just like, I just felt this huge feeling of, oh, my time's running out. Even at like 17, I remember working at Topshop and I'd be like at the till, oh, hey, babe, what do you do? Oh, I work at Days. Oh, our till's broken. Do you mind writing your email on this receipt to get you? There was no such thing as email receipts back then, but I've had her email and I would send things out. And I stress how your community is your biggest asset. Like I see a lot of, with the rise of social media and the internet, everyone wants to like be doing things. And I remember sitting there thinking how blessed I was for people to not see my early work and to only be working with my friends, because you're all kind of in the same pool. And it's like, oh, hey, babe, I've got this idea for a shoot to do in Thamesmead. Are you free in 2 weeks? And, little by little, you grow your craft and you put it somewhere. And I think if you just have to really want it, because I never had the opportunities to really assist or to really put money into my projects. So it's like we shared one camera between 4 people at one point. There's ways to go around, and there's like, I'm not saying grants help, but I think if you really want to, you can find ways. And if you love it, it's going to be apparent. But that's what I think is fab about London, though, because a lot of London creators, I feel like we're not rich in the commerce of sense, but we're rich in the creative sense, because they'll be like, here's £10, do something, and we can. But I just remember meeting people going out. I'm like, what do you do? This is fab. And I used to like take pictures at parties, like at clubs, because I was like, I can't create shoots, but this look is fab. And I just, if you really want to do something, I think just do it to the death of you in a way.
Use the fact that you can't, afford a career, like turn it into a positive. Like, in the beginning, we didn't, when I first cast our pieces, like we didn't afford, I was like, how much does it cost to cast this? Told me, like, I was like, okay, how much does it cost to plate it? And he was like, well, you have to polish it first. And I was like, okay, but what about if we just don't polish it? And he's like, well, that's insane. That's insane. And I was like, well, let's just try and see what happens. And that's like a cheaper way of doing it. And then like it came out and I was like, oh my God, I love that it's not polished. Like, and that's what made it what it is. So like, use the fact that you don't have that to do it differently. Because actually what makes you different, I guess, is that like, you're not a mega brand, and that you're not going to be able to create, a slick shoot like whatever X mega brand, but then do something. Don't try to replicate that for less. Go at it your own way.
Ideas make money, not. I remember getting told that at uni, and I was like, oh, I can breathe a little because I've got many ideas. I don't think people should want to grow up too quickly in this industry either. The experimental phase is the best phase in any job.
Why things like Rubric and mentoring matters are so important. It's because, for people who aren't going to uni to study fashion, who aren't in that side of it, so designer, who aren't going to London College of Fashion, if you're just a regular person, not regular is not the right word to use, but if you're just, for instance, in my case, coming from a salon in South London, no connection to the fashion industry. None of my friends were in fashion. So I didn't even have that peer-to-peer kind of like, aspiration, or like a place where you could go and like create, so if you literally have access to nothing, to no starting point, I think, mentoring matters. And, because I think my mentees on mentoring matters, for instance, one of them, she's moved from a place where there's no industry, and she's now in New York, and it's kind of like she's completely, just figuring out the lay of the land, and she has no connections. And it's like how I've structured my whole mentoring matters thing, we're not necessarily I know you already have the skill, the technical skill. I'm like, what is your mission? What is your purpose? What is your vision? How are you going to get there? What are your non-negotiables, and what are your, you know what I mean? And kind of like knowing where you fit, and also being okay that you're not going to fit everywhere, and that is okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Really, because everyone tries to break it to make it as like a big fashion star, and actually sometimes your skills aren't best suited to that kind of for that industry. And there's so many different routes you can go. I think all those routes, I think, the idea of like, you have to do this fashion thing and here are the steps is really dangerous. Really not dangerous, but it's so inaccurate, and it's not attainable for everyone. Furthermore, because the industry has come the whole industry, the landscape is completely different. There are so many things, so many other ways that you can do it. And it's a real opportunity to actually curate exactly what you want to say with your career, I guess.
Obviously, with BLM, it triggered all sorts of changes, which was, that's necessary. How did that impact you guys in terms of money? I've spoken to a lot of people. Well, I've spoken to a few people of colour, because there isn't that many in the industry. And, they went from earning a certain amount, expected to earn a certain amount, to earning a very different amount after that. And I just want to see how that impacted you guys. Did you feel more appreciated, insulted? Because people have different opinions about how they feel since that whole sort of moment.
I've had this conversation with so many people, and I've had this conversation with even some people here. It's a tricky one, because we were all successful before the last year. However, I think I can definitely talk for myself that I think certain brands and certain teams started to pay a bit more attention, it was interesting the people that now wanted to pay attention and ensure I was booked on a job, whether that's them ticking boxes, whether that's them wanting to be more diverse or appear more diverse, who knows? Was there probably a level of tokenism sometimes? Probably. Like, I think we're all very used to being on set and being the only non-white person on set. However, as discussed with people before, I think there's a real privilege, in my opinion, in some people's thought of it that Black creatives should have turned down some of the opportunities that they were given in the last year. I think there's a real privilege to that idea, because I think fashion is very much built on nepotism, and fashion has existed by being someone's goddaughter or someone's friend or someone going and doing drugs in one club with this person or whatever, right? That's how the generations before us, a lot were built on. Not to discredit their talent, but you know, that was the foundations. And I think a lot of non-white creatives may have been excluded from that experience. So if now, through BLM and through things being shifted a little bit, whether it is wanting to appear diverse or because they have real intention to open the doors and be more diverse, if that then means that non-white and Black creatives then are given opportunity they would never have been given before, that opens the door so that people actually pay attention to them, because the talent is there. The talent was always there. They just weren't necessarily considered, right? So now in that door being creaked open, if someone then has an opportunity given to them that then exposes them to an even bigger audience, we don't have the privilege to turn that opportunity down, because we might not be here in 2023, or in terms of the spotlight might not be on Black creatives at that point. So that's my personal opinion on it. I think, financially, I'd done a lot better in the last year. Last year was very good for me. I was booked all the time. Do I feel like I was probably used somewhat? Probably, but equally, it gave me more opportunity that I'm going to springboard off of, because that's opportunity.
I think it's great though, because I had the whole inner turmoil and it all happened. I posted one thing and I was like, do not text me, do not call me, do not email me, I don't want to do a job. And I remember speaking to everyone, and I just was like, I think I was just scrambling with my own moral codes, because I come from a place where I'd count pennies, and now in a position where I don't have to count pennies. Again, who am I? Like, I still live my life from before all of this. So who am I to be turning down jobs because, it's because I'm Black? It's like, girl, get the job, get the cash, go home and chill. I always say, like, we're all vessels to bring forth change. And how am I going to bring forth change? By accepting some of this nonsense. But then in evidence to, stepping stone and growth, by accepting certain jobs, and I made sure that I communicated. I was like, if I'm going to take a job, I'll make sure I communicate and it's an open table, because I found there was a lot of fear from clients expecting me to bark at them. And I always say to them, I'm not a barker, I'm a conversator. I want us to make sure that what we're doing makes sense for everything, because me just taking a job and dipping doesn't push anything forward. And you just giving me a job for this time means in 9 months' time, 2021, I won't be on your list no more. And it's not about me, it's about us.
Everyone else. Yeah.
And it's
but then
like,
also Campbell, but then you don't dictate the team. By you being involved
100%.
in that project, you dictate the team, which then expands it and then makes change, and then you being the person that did it, your name on the credit, someone else of a younger generation would see that and maybe inspire them. So while it can be a bit angsty, you being in that specific position, it affects underneath and to the sideways as well.
Yeah. But that's literally what, like, the Dean said it, Julia said it, Gabby. Because I was like, and they're like, no, because it's like, you just got to get there. And then and just by communicating with people, it was hard at the beginning. And I did worry a lot about money, because I was like, oh, Lord. But then I was like, listen, I've always been a person who hides 60% of everything from my own eyes. So, like, I have to stop. I think I kept having imposter syndrome. It kind of made me really look at my imposter syndrome during that time. Like, listen, look at the world right now. Yes, like, shit has hit the fan. But 3 years ago, if I was in this situation, it'll be a very different setup for me. So how can I think positively? And it was things like, take the job, but be like, this person has to do it with me, or or like, for me, I try to control the casting as much as possible. You want to do a diverse shoot? I'd rather have the person behind the camera more diverse. Who's the producer? I found before the whole Black Lives Matter situation, no one was really asking on my shoots anyway, hair, makeup, or nails about the idea. And little things like that I'm trying to be like, no, like don't call me on a call to talk about hair. Call Cyndia, because they are talented. And I found during that period, the hierarchy in fashion teams, I realized how dumb, how much stuff they gave to photographers, and the rest would just, there's little things. It helped other minorities within our minorities, if that makes sense.
I think it's really interesting looking at, I mean, obviously it's a little different for me because I'm, running a brand, but if I look around at other brands, like I think it's so painfully obvious who is, doing things to appear diverse, and, you see people, taking a job, which obviously like take the job, but as a brand, like if you're going to try and be more diverse, like do it properly and like give that person the creative control to shoot something how they want to shoot it and to style it how they want to style it. Like I think, I'm sure we've all seen examples of lots of different size brands actually show more, models of color, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, cool, they've ticked the diversity box. It's like, well, who owns these brands? Who's making the money from these brands? Are you sharing your, do you pay your interns? Like it does drive me nuts, because it's just like the hypocrisy of it. And that's not down to, the photographer or stylist or hair or makeup or nails. Like it's down to the brand. Yeah, it's just so hypocritical. It's like, don't pretend to be something that you're not. If you're going to do it, like actually try and understand it. Don't just do it to tick a box.
There's an element of also the metrics of not having a Black person on the cover of your shoot, because, apparently Black isn't luxury. I was having a conversation the other day and this came up as well. And the guy was saying, it's all about the bottom line and it's all about those metrics. And it's because they think a diverse cast doesn't sell magazine, because what the world has been fed previously is this very whitewashed standard kind of like European straight hair. And when you go to a publication and they're like, oh, why don't you have a Black person or any person of color on your magazine? It's because the numbers, as well as them being hypocritical and as well as them just selling us this idea of what beauty is.
If the access to visual media doesn't look like the people, why are they going to buy into it? So your metrics are biased instantly. It's like, well, of course your metrics are wrong, because when I won't buy these magazines, why would I? There's a lovely blonde lady on it. No, it doesn't relate to me at all.
Exactly.
But then it's like, media's proven it time and time again, from movies to music. And right at this point now, I'm just like, BS. I'm like, just tell us you don't like us, and that's fine. I'd rather you tell me you don't like me and I can keep it moving, than you'd be like, try and make up this nonsense of why you can't do a certain thing.
Yeah. And the other layer of that, right, is that all these minority cultures is actually the actual culture itself is actually, so you don't want to put me in there, but you want to dress someone up, the appropriation piece, you know what I mean? It's like, we've proven time and time again that we are the benchmark for inspiration.
What advice could you give to someone to stop them from getting ripped off, basically? Because there's obviously a lot of people still within this industry who do like to try and rip people off. So what advice would you give to sort of navigate that?
Reach out, use social media and reach out to someone who's in the position that you're in and ask them some advice directly. What exactly do you need help with? Okay, Cyndia, I have a shoot coming up. I'm not entirely sure how to negotiate my fee. What would you recommend? Because that client is not going to tell you. You're not going to be made to feel like you can actually ask the questions. Sometimes, when you're dealing with, if you're a freelancer, maybe not so much when you have an agent. If you're a freelancer, there's just no one to ask. So I would reach out to people like genuinely, and that's the only way that you're going to know.
I don't know who will be watching or listening to this, but that helped me before I started 100%. I don't know, maybe I'm a bit obtuse. I just thought I can ask anyone anything. And even now, like, I do reply to strangers about infrastructure about things, because I remember being so just lost with it. I don't feel like I should hold information that I desperately needed 5 years ago. So I'm very forthcoming with it. And I think you'd be surprised. Like, I remember asking some photographers who I didn't know on Tumblr, and they were like, yeah, this is what the usage should be, and vice versa. Because at the end of the day, the artist that you are messaging probably understands exactly how you feel in that situation in order to ask them, because they're like, oh, yeah, I know, and also you'd be surprised. Like, I've had conversations with brands where like a rate has been given to me because I'm signed, or to someone else because they're signed, and then a younger artist will get it, or they'll say yes. And I'm like, that's not how it should be. And I understand about infrastructures, but it's like the margins shouldn't be so much, because I'm sure the unsigned younger artist is doing 1,000 times more work just to get in the room, even once they're in the room. So at least give them that respect for a little,
a little bit
£1,000 to a brand is nothing. That extra £1,000 to a new student could be like, oh, I don't have to worry about my rent for 2 months. So it's like,
and if that's your budget, that's your budget. So why not give it then? Regardless, you have it. That's your budget.
I mean, I would say also, like, again, it's a little bit different, but as a brand, but if you are, trying to create a collection, just be careful of the traditional way of doing things. Like, don't feel like you have to subscribe to, sales agents or showrooms. Like, they'll all tell you that you can't do it without them, and just, believe that you can. And everything looks magic and shiny from the outside, and they're all going to tell you what you want to hear. If I can get you this person, this stockist, like this person to wear it, and these are the fees, and just be really wary. Like, don't spend anything that you don't absolutely have to, and just be careful of people who are kind of selling you the dream for a big invoice, because everyone's going to try and sell you the dream to make money.
What advice would you give to, obviously you're all very successful at what you're doing, very brilliant, but what advice would you give to your younger selves if you were just starting out?
How much time do we have?
Someone else, I'd say ask more, be more inquisitive, be more curious, actually. Because if I was like Campbell and had the gift of the Croydon Gab, I would have asked all these questions. And like, don't feel that you have to figure it all out on your own. Actually, people should be there to support you, and even if the majority aren't, there's going to be that one person in the room who will support. And so keep curious and ask questions, basically. Ask questions, seek out mentors in both the creative side and the financial side.
I would say what Campbell said earlier on, of like, I think when I was first started, I was so hungry to grow it. All I wanted was like the stockist that I wanted. And I was like so focused, and everyone said to me, like, you don't want it too fast because you won't be ready. You won't be able to produce it, blah, 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 like, enjoy this time. And now that like there is this structure in the business and it's grown, I wish I could go back to myself then and be like, oh my God, you had so much freedom. Like, no one was watching. You could just make whatever you wanted and just take your time. Like, don't feel like you have to go so fast, and enjoy the bit before the growth.
I think for me, while I would ask questions, and like at the very beginning, I would kind of like make the introductions or just talk to people because I had nothing to lose. I think there was a certain point past that when I made myself quite small.
I hear that.
And I think that is to do with several things. I think it's, like I said, to do with being nails, so the smallest kind of piece of the puzzle in some ways. And I think also it was maybe to do with being in a lot of white rooms and to not be the loud, annoying manicurist, and to not stand out, or to not come across as simple, or to not. I think I just made myself quite bland. There was an era that I know I definitely made myself very palatable, and it wasn't me. I would have to force myself, if I was on a set with a big team, take my position in some ways, like even if I wasn't given the position, like I'm here as well. And that's not saying you have to be the big I am, but I just think don't make yourself small is really important. And I would definitely tell myself that again. And I think I'd come out of that phase a while ago, thank God. But I do think last year MBLM brought a whole different level of no fucks given, if I'm being honest. Like, there would be topics that I would never discuss on jobs, ever. And now, not that I'll bring it up, if it comes up, I'm definitely saying my true honest opinion. in a way that I probably would have heavily filtered myself.
That's great advice, Amma, because I feel like a lot of people feel that way, and it's kind of like one of the hardest things to actually admit, you know?
Yeah, I still do right now.
Yeah.
Times when I'm in the space and I'm just tongue-tied or just like frozen in anxiety, and then you're just kind of like, wait, hold on. Maybe go get a cup of tea and I'll come back.
That feeling of still not feeling good enough to be here.
I
think that, like, am I ever gonna not feel like that?
We'll have days like that. Like, imposter syndrome is very real. Do you know what I mean? Like, and there's some days when you're there and you feel like, and then you kind of like catch yourself feeling very comfortable, and you're like, "Raw, have I like?"
I think this is a whole other panel discussion.
And then there's other times when you're there and you're just like you're just small again, and you're like, "What am I doing?" And you check yourself.
Do whatever you want until someone says you can't. I only wish I told myself that or knew that as a child. As a young Black boy, you get an idea to do something, and before you've even said it to yourself in the mirror, the world just, subliminally told you can't do anything. But unbeknownst to yourself, when you do something with confidence, those who want to stop you are so scared to stop you because you're so confident that they just join you anyway. So it's like, me doing the magazine and the agency, people say, oh, how did you do a modeling agency and a magazine? I was like, I had time and I was crazy. And I had a year where I had to do, but when I look back, I genuinely didn't have enough time to question myself or to doubt myself. So then you end up doing things, like, oh, I'm here. 2 years later, it just happened so quickly. So that's the only advice, because growing up with a lot of my other straight male counterparts, getting to like my mid-20s, we would talk to each other and realize, hang on, you've never been told no. Like, or you've never been told you're not allowed to do this. Like, I was told in foundation, oh, you won't go to St. Martin's, so go to another one. Or once I got to St. Martin's, oh, maybe you should think of something else to do. There was always a but to my like, oh, can I do this? Yeah, but, even at home, just from my upbringing. So it's like, but then I see my other counterparts and all they've had is kind of, yeah, you can do it. And it's kind of like it forms your brain in a different way as you're growing. So, if the little Black kids, brown kids out in the world were just told at like 5 years old, literally you can do anything you want, now go, we wouldn't have things like imposter syndrome as much, or we wouldn't, be making ourselves feel small, because in your head you're like, well, no, I'm perfectly fine, you're the problem. Whereas I feel like our generation have been told, can't be vulnerable, get your head down, disappear in the crowd as opposed to sticking out.
That's great. I think that's it. Thank you, Cyndia, Campbell, Amma, and Rosh. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure too. Okay, thank you so much, Ben.
Thank you, guys.
Guys.